Hi friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan, and today we're going to be continuing our Clone Wars history series with our coverage of the third year of the war. Now, before we begin, don't forget to hit that subscribe and notification button down below so you don't miss out on the rest of this series. In our last episode, we looked at the very profitable black market Padawan hunting industry. Today we'll be looking at a civil war that happens on a planet with both Separatist and Republic interests. It's only the beginning of decades-long conflict, suffering, and occupation for this otherwise very peaceful and productive world, which has basically become another casualty for a galactic-wide struggle for power. Chapter 5. Mon Calamari's Civil War. There were a few worlds in the galaxy that were considered untouchable either because of their political or cultural significance, such as Coruscant and, well, Alderaan. There were other worlds that were industrial and economic powerhouses like Quant and Fondor with their own orbital shipyards. They had enough power to leverage their own freedom. Mon Cala, also known as Doc by the locals, was also one of these types of planets. The oceanic world was located in the outer rim, far removed from the galaxy on the end of its own hyperspace lane. But it was known for producing some of the best starships in the galaxy, along with terrific explorers and merchants. With a population of over 27 million sentient beings and with various exotic and unique cultures under the oceans, Doc was a major powerhouse in that region of the galaxy and provided all sorts of unique and exotic goods and foodstuff for the rest of the galaxy. The two main types of people on Mon Cala were the Mon Calamari and the Quarrens. These two species had lived alongside each other for tens of thousands of years. The fact that one species has not wiped out the other is a testament to their tolerance. These two species are so uniquely balanced and dependent on each other that they can't destroy the other. The Mon Calamari were more fish-like in appearance and more adapted to the shallower areas of the sea. Because of this, they built their cities closer to the surface. They also ran the few cities on Mon Cala that were above the water on reefs and atolls. The Mon Cala were an aquatic species that could breed underwater, but they were also pretty well adapted to living on land. Culturally speaking, the Mon Cala were quite peaceful and open-minded. They also tended to be quite romantic and passionate about life, which is why their society has created more than their fair share of artists, adventurers, and military leaders. Creativity was extremely important for the Mon Cala society. For instance, the shipbuilders considered every ship they constructed a piece of art, which is why no two Mon Calamari cruisers are the same shape, size, or design. It was said that the shipbuilders saw their designs as more of a living work of art rather than just a simple tool or weapon. Without mass-produced designs, this meant that each ship was built custom with very organic features, and every ship had its own strengths and therefore were hard to predict and fight against. The Mon Cala ships were also extremely durable thanks to the species' experience with building underwater pressurized cities. Mon Calamari starships were treasured all across the galaxy for these reasons. Now, the species' open-mindedness and curiosity for the unknown meant that many Mon Cala would become adventurers, and they would be the first from their planet to establish trade routes and political connections with neighboring worlds. That meant that the Mon Calamari naturally became the traders and diplomatic representatives of their world as well. And because they were more likely to travel away from their world, they adapted a more galactic taste for art, food, and design. They felt connected to the rest of the Republic and therefore fully embraced the idea of being a part of it. The Quarrens were the opposite to the Mon Calamari in many ways. More squid-like in nature, the Quarrens could handle the pressures of the deepest part of the oceans quite well. And so they lived on the ocean floor and in its many abysses, isolated from the rest of the galaxy. The Quarrens disliked light and enjoyed being able to hide in the shadows. Unlike the Mon Calamari, the Quarren society developed to be very proud, xenophobic, and isolationist. For instance, the average Quarren would only speak its native tongue and avoid Basic, whereas most Mon Calamari could speak Basic and did it quite often. The Quarrens were in charge of many deep ocean mining operations and refineries, which helped supply materials for the shipyards run by the Mon Calamari. Now, in legends, it was said that the Quarrens first rose up from the depths of the ocean and encountered the Mon Calamari somewhere around 4,500 years before the Battle of Yavin. The Quarrens quickly attacked the Mon Calamari, but they had inferior technology compared to the surface dwellers and were quickly defeated. The Mon Calamari realized that if they continued this war against the Quarrens, they would most likely drive their species to extinction, which they really didn't want. They wanted cooperation, so the Mon Cala came up with a very creative and outside of the box kind of solution to this problem, which is very Mon Cala. What they did was they took 100 young Quarrens and taught them as if they were one of their own. These captives learned about Mon Calamari art, science, and ethics, and once they reached adulthood, those Quarrens were sent down below to rejoin their society. At first, the Quarrens from down below did not trust these Mon Cala Quarrens, and the Mon Cala Quarrens saw their own people as kind of backwards and barbaric. But by the time these young Quarrens had gotten older, their superior education allowed them to exert a massive amount of influence on their society. This would be the beginning of a very beneficial relationship between the Mon Cala and the Quarrens. Soon, the Quarrens were brought up to date with the rest of the galaxy, and the Quarrens started traveling off-world for work and adventure. Things were relatively good for many centuries, but when the Separatist crisis occurred, things started to change. You see, the Confederacy of Independent Systems was really good at taking a unified planet and finding an opposition to start a civil war. Most planets had a political party or second species that were unhappy with the status quo, and overnight, these opposition groups were offered massive amounts of resources and money to expand their movement. And if one principal individual refused to take the Separatist offer, 10 other highly ambitious individuals would take his place. On Mon Cala, that individual happened to be Senator Teeks, representative of the Mon Cala star system. Senator Teeks was a very crafty businessman before he entered politics, and he remained one once he was in office. During the Separatist crisis, Teeks was implicated with other senators for operating a slave ring and was forced to escape from Coruscant while under investigation. He quickly found his way to Count Dooku and pledged the support of Mon Cala to the Confederacy of Independent Systems. Even though he was under investigation, he was still technically holding his spot as the representative for Mon Cala. And so the Mon Calamari people quickly appointed a pro-Republic Quarren politician to Teeks' former position to avoid further confusion and embarrassment. It looked like for a moment at least the disaster was averted. Mon Cala would remain in the Republic. But Teeks now continued to work behind the scenes, growing a movement known as the Quarren Isolation League. The Quarren Isolationist League was not necessarily an independence movement. Instead, it was just concerned that the monarch of Mon Cala was always a Mon Calamari and never a Quarren. As the Clone Wars continued to expand and the galactic economy continued shrinking, more and more Quarrens started supporting the Quarren Isolation League. Even Quarren chieftain Nosar Ree began feeling the pressure. The Separatists, as always working behind the scenes, sent their own ambassador Riff Tamsin to monitor the situation. Tamsin quickly went to work and murdered King Colina, the monarch of Mon Cala. This instability presented a unique opportunity for the Quarren Isolation League to push forward their agenda. King Colina's successor, Prince Lichar, was considered far too young and inexperienced for this position. Nosar Ree and his Quarrens walked out of the meeting with the Mon Calamari when they could not agree to terms about who would be the next monarch for the planet. Unbeknownst to the Mon Calamari, the Quarren Isolation League had been militarizing its members. Separatist agent Riff Tamsin had also brought along with him a sizable army of aquatic droids to support the Quarren rebellion. Shortly after the meeting between the Mon Calamari and Quarrens fell apart, a massive attack is carried out by the Quarren Isolation League against the Mon Cala. Unprepared, the Mon Cala are quickly overwhelmed. Luckily, the Jedi Council had already sent several of their own ambassadors along with an attachment of clone troopers trained for underwater combat. The scuba troopers and Jedi managed to link up with the new King Lichar and help keep him safe as he waged war against the Quarrens. The Republic reinforcements managed to push back the Quarren Revolution from the capital, but soon after they were back again with a massive fleet of Hydroid Medusas, which were essentially electrified gigantic jellyfish cyborgs. The Republic forces are immediately routed and forced to hide inside of caves outside the capital city, which has fallen to the Confederacy. Riff Tamsin, under orders from Count Dooku, has basically taken over control of the Civil War and has turned it into a full-on Separatist invasion. Using his army of droids and the Quarren extremists, the citizens of the Mon Cala capital are captured and put to work in internment camps. This deeply worried Nosar Ree, who immediately protests against Tamsin. You see, the real reason why Riff Tamsin is here is because he was promised stewardship of the planet once it was taken over by pro-Confederacy troops. The Jedi are now hiding in caves along with what remains of the scuba troopers and Royal Mon Calamari troops that are left. They managed to call for reinforcements from the Jedi High Council before all communications off-world were cut. Back on Coruscant, the Jedi Council runs into a big problem. First, the clone army, as usual, was spread thin, but more importantly, there were very few units in the clone army trained for underwater combat. And they were all preoccupied at the time or already deployed on Mon Cala. General Kenobi, always prepared to think outside the box, suggests that they bring the Gungans in instead. Senator Jar Jar Binks is able to back the plan, and the Gungan High Council agrees to arrange for the troops. And before the Republic forces on Mon Cala are overrun, the Gungan army arrives and quickly turns the tide. Riff Tamson then uses one of his Trident-class assault ships to create a massive underwater whirlwind around the battle. This disorients the Republic forces and scatters their offensive. When the dust finally settles, the majority of Republic forces have been captured by the Confederacy. However, King Lee Char and the Jedi Padawan Ahsoka Tano have escaped the disastrous battle and remain free from capture. From a strategic level, it looks like the Confederacy of Independent Systems have won the battle, but in reality, this was no longer looking like a justifiable civil war. Instead of allowing animosity to build up naturally between the Quarrens and the Mon Cala, the Confederacy's very blunt and visible use of droids have made this just another battle of the Clone Wars. The capture and slavery of Mon Calamari civilians is especially hard for the Quarren populace to swallow. You see, the Quarren Isolation League was just a small, extreme faction within the larger Quarren population, and even they were uncomfortable with enslaving their neighbors. No one really wanted that kind of situation to happen. Count Dooku Riff Tamson also seemed to lack any respect for No Sir-Ree, and quickly the Quarren chieftain is beginning to realize the mistake he has made. Lee Char with Ahsoka's help reaches people in the prison camp and call for their support to overthrow not the Quarren Isolation League, but the CIS. And just as quickly as Mon Cala fell apart, it came together under the combined leadership of Lee Char and No Sir-Ree and overthrew Riff Tamson and his Separatist forces. This would just be the beginning of Lee Char's reign, one that would be full of conflict. Unfortunately, Mon Cala, because of its rich economy and industrial output, presented a pretty big target for outside powers, and for the next several decades, peace would be elusive for these aquatic people. In our next episode, we're going to be looking at the Gungans, who have just sacrificed a massive army to help out the Mon Calamari, as civil war is also brewing on their planet between the Naboo and the Gungans. Don't forget to hit that subscribe and notification button down below so you don't miss out on that video. And as usual, thanks for joining us today. If you're watching this, you are Generation Tech.